What is up, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here, and I've got a volume of Wolverine and the X-Men I want to talk to you guys about. This is Wolverine and the X-Men Volume 6, written by Jason Aaron and illustrated by, I don't know how to pronounce his name. It's Ramon Perez, but here on the front cover, the accent mark is on the first E. But then here on the back cover, I don't know if you guys can see this or not, the accent is on the second E. So I don't know if it's Ramon Perez or Ramon Perez, because, you know, George Perez, who drew the new Teen Titans in the 1980s, his name is pronounced Perez, and I don't know if that's how you pronounce this guy's name, and they've kind of, I'm getting mixed signals here, so I don't know, but anyway, that's his name, and he's the guy who illustrated this whole volume. And this book collects issues 25 through 29 of Wolverine and the X-Men. And basically, the storyline here is there is a field trip to the Savage Land that Wolverine is overseeing, and it's involving most of the problem students at the school. And it's a little, the book plays a little fast and loose with what that means, because some of these characters are actually problem students, like Globe Herman, who's been nothing but a useless, incompetent jerk since he's been at the school, Quentin Quire, who likes to play the part of being a rebellious jerk, and then you have someone like Kid Apocalypse, who potentially could become an evil supervillain when he grows up. But then you have other characters like Eye-Boy and Shark Girl, who, what are they doing there? They're just new students, and it doesn't really make sense why Wolverine would demand that they go on this field trip here. But anyway, they go on this field trip, and basically the idea is they all have to work together to get home. And then hilarity ensues, things kind of escalate and get out of hand, and things happen that Wolverine did not see coming, and so they have to survive in a situation that's more perilous than what Wolverine thought, and Wolverine also has to survive because he's in danger as well. And I said in my review of Volume 5 that I thought the Frankenstein story went on way too long, and that wasn't even the whole entire Volume 5. That was just part of Volume 5, and I said that the Frankenstein stuff went on too long. This is pretty much the entire book. There's one issue here that is not the Savage Land field trip, and I still think the Savage Land field trip thing, it goes on just long enough. It's weird that this entire book, except for one issue, is this storyline, and I don't think that it's too long like I did with the Frankenstein stuff. So I don't know why I think that the Savage Land story is just right, but the Frankenstein stuff I felt like dragged on too long. Maybe it's just that I didn't really care for the Frankenstein circus stuff, and that's just all there is to it. And the Savage Land, I can take it in small doses, but I don't think that it's the Savage Land that I like here. I think it's just the idea of these kids and Wolverine kind of getting to spend some time together. Because if you go back and look at the previous 5 volumes of this run, Wolverine hasn't really gotten to spend that much time with these kids. So far, he's been doing a lot of fighting bad guys in this series, and he doesn't really get to interact with a lot of the kids. You'll see him sometimes talking with Quentin Quire or Evan, but for the most part, he's doing the non-headmaster stuff, and you've got characters like Beast and Kitty Pryde and Rachel Summers, and they are the ones who are doing the more headmasterly things. And so it's really a lot of fun to finally get to see Wolverine being a headmaster and kind of taking charge and spending some time with these kids. I've been waiting for that for a long time, and I didn't realize that that was what I was waiting for. So that's a lot of fun. And also, this story just feels kind of bigger than the Frankenstein story. The Frankenstein thing, I don't know why, but it felt like that should have been dealt with quicker. And this, it feels like the stakes are higher, and it feels like you need to spend more time showing the kids learn to work together or not work together, as the case may be. It feels like you need to spend more time showing them do that. So that's a lot of fun. The last issue is, I've heard some people say it's kind of sort of an Age of Ultron tie-in. I don't really know how. The last issue is set, I think, 25 years in the future or 20 years in the future. I don't really remember. And it's basically we get a good look at the Jean Grey School of the future, and that is a whole lot of fun. I always love time travel stuff and looking at possible futures, and this is interesting because at first you're thinking that it's going to be kind of a nod to Days of Future Past, where you're going to have a character who's going to go back in time and they're going to change the timeline, and Wolverine even wants to do that, old Wolverine. And then one of his former students says, listen, no, you don't need to do that. And it's really interesting. That whole issue is just really fun. And I guess another reason why I thought that it was going in a Days of Future Past direction was because of this cover here, which is obviously a nod to the Days of Future Past, the very famous Days of Future Past cover. But for that final issue of this book, the only way that I can really see that it is an Age of Ultron tie-in is that in the present day in that issue, Wolverine is burying a time capsule that all of the students and staff have put something in. And then in the future, old Wolverine, he finds the time capsule, and then he's talking to people, and he says, I don't remember burying this, do you? And then his former student says, no, I don't either. And so I'm wondering, because Age of Ultron had a whole lot to do with time travel and resetting the future and creating another alternate future, and even though this particular future that we see in issue 29 of Wolverine and the X-Men, even though that is not the Age of Ultron timeline, because that timeline is quite a bit darker, even though that's not that timeline, I'm wondering if the reason that old Wolverine and I-Man don't remember burying the time capsule is because of all the time travel shenanigans going on in Age of Ultron. That's my theory, but I don't really know if that's true or not, or maybe Jason Aaron is going to explain later on in this series why old Wolverine and I-Man don't remember that. Or maybe they won't, I don't know. But that was a little bit interesting, quite a bit of fun right there for that issue. And I will say, if you're only reading Wolverine and the X-Men and you've never heard of Age of Ultron, you might be a little bit curious, you might be a little confused, why don't those two guys remember burying that time capsule? And I will say, if it ends up being a very, very minor tie-in with Age of Ultron, and then they don't come back to that in the next two volumes, that is a little bit disappointing, especially for anyone out there who hasn't read Age of Ultron. I haven't read Age of Ultron, I don't plan on it, but I know a little bit about what it's about, and so if they don't come back and explain why old Wolverine and old I-Boy don't remember burying that time capsule, I'd be a little bit disappointed if I didn't already know the loose, vague connection with Age of Ultron. I don't really have a whole lot else to say here. I guess I should talk about the bad guy. There he is. That is Dog Logan, who is Wolverine's half-brother, and if you've read the Origin miniseries by Bill Jemas and one of the Kubert brothers from the early 2000s, like 2001, Dog Logan first appeared there, and then for like 10 years he wasn't appearing in anything, and then in Jason Aaron's Spider-Man and Wolverine miniseries, I think it was called Astonishing Spider-Man and Wolverine, which I did a review for several months back. In that miniseries, he did a lot of fun time travel stuff with Spider-Man and Wolverine going all over the future and the past, the very, very far future and the very, very far past, and he brought Dog Logan into the present day in that storyline. And so if you have never read The Astonishing Spider-Man and Wolverine, and then you were just reading Wolverine and the X-Men, this is another situation where you might be a little bit confused. You might be saying, okay, Dog Logan was around in the 1800s, and then he gets something called a time diamond, which we see in this book. We see him holding one of the time diamonds from Astonishing Spider-Man and Wolverine. He gets one of those time diamonds, and then he moves forward into the present day. And you might be saying, if you haven't read that Spider-Man Wolverine story, you might be saying, how did he get that time diamond? That's a little bit weird. And that's another one of those situations. If you haven't read that book, you probably need to. I don't want to say that the Astonishing Spider-Man Wolverine is necessary in order to read and enjoy this volume, but you might want to read it just to find out exactly the how and why of Dog Logan moving forward in time. But basically all you need to know is that this diamond that he has in this book, it allows him to travel through time. And that's really all there is to it. This book is a lot of fun. I enjoyed this more than I did Volume 5 with the Frankenstein stuff, and definitely more than the Avengers vs. X-Men tie-in, so I feel like this series is back on track, which is a shame because it's winding down to a close. There's only 2 more volumes of Jason Aaron's run on this series left to go, but I'm really enjoying it so far. And I definitely think when I'm done with this series that it's going to be one of those runs that I'm going to go back and reread in the future, and it's going to rank very high on my top X-Men runs of all time. I don't know if it's going to be like top 5 X-Men runs of all time. I said when I first started reading this series that if everything was as good as Volume 1 that it would be like top 5 material. I'm not sure if it's top 5 material, but it's pretty good. So I would definitely recommend Volume 6 of Wolverine and the X-Men, but keep in mind, there are some connections to other stories that you might want to keep fresh in your mind. Maybe an Age of Ultron connection, I don't know, and then the Astonishing Spider-Man Wolverine, which you should go read anyway because it's awesome. So that's all I have to say about this book. I hope that you guys enjoyed my review, and if you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you guys tomorrow for an entirely different kind of video. Until then, I'll see you guys later. Have a great day.